everybody. Welcome to the Poetry Flash reading series. As Harold told you, I'm Joyce Jenkins, editor and director of Poetry Flash. And today we are really pleased to present Jesse Nathan and Diana Arterian. It is a great pleasure to have them here on this day with the fireplace and trying to make this cozy. We have their books here for purchase after the reading. Copies of the books are also available online at the nonprofit bookshop.org/shop/poetryflash. If you'd like to sign our mailing list to find out about future events, right here, the analog clipboard, it's much less confusing than the online sign up, but you can also sign up at poetryflash.org. And videos of this event and all of our readings are posted at poetryflash.org. Actually, no. They're posted, I'm just so used to saying that it's ingrained, it's like imprinted. The video will be on our Poetry Flash YouTube channel. So all you do is go to YouTube and do a search for Poetry Flash and it'll take you to our page. A coalition of arts groups in Berkeley, including Poetry Flash, have launched an effort to get arts funding on the ballot in November to counter severe budget cuts. If you are registered to vote in Berkeley and would be willing to sign our petition here, please see me before you leave. I would be eternally grateful. We need 4,200 signatures by May 1st, and we have to complete the mission by April 24th. So if you could help us with even one signature, that would be a great favor. We truly appreciate your being with us here today. We do the best we can to help keep our community together. And that's the purpose of these events and the review online. And we feel that it's even more important than usual in these chaotic days we're experiencing. Thanks to Art House Gallery and impresario Harold Adler, Support Art House, and thanks to Stephen Bunza and Rosalinda Monroy for their help today. Our first reader is Diana Arterian, and I'm just absolutely thrilled that she's here from San Jose and LA. Her most recent poetry collection is Agrippina the Younger. Brandon Psalm says, in this stunningly lyrical book, rigorously researched and rigorously imagined, we hear history as lies, but also lyre, an instrument in Arterian's hands, attentively tuned and pitch perfect with song. She is also editor and co-translator of Smoke Drifts, poetry by the late Afghan poet Nadia Anjuman. We have copies here. Her first collection, Plain Monster, is the first part of the title, received a starred review in Publishers Weekly and was a Poetry Foundation staff pick. A poetry editor at Noemi Press and twice-finalist for the National Poetry Series. Her creative work has been recognized with fellowships from the Banff Centre, Millay Arts, Yaddo, and elsewhere. She writes the Annotated Nightstand column at Lit Hub and is currently the 2026 Lurie Distinguished Visiting Professor at San José State University. Please welcome Diana Arterian.
Thank you so much, Joyce and Stephen, and all of you for being here, and Jesse for reading with me, and being here on this very rainy April day. I thought that Jesse and I were going to have a very intimate reading of just reading to ourselves and to the YouTube, but yeah, I'm so honored to be here. I'm going to read from the 2 books that came out last year, and I'm going to start with reading from Smoke Drifts, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Anjuman, but first through kind of how her poetry has continued to exist since her death 20 years ago. And so essentially, she grew up under Taliban rule, in which women weren't allowed to attend any kind of school after a certain age, and it was so restrictive that she would meet with other women under the guise of needlepoint, because it was one of the few things that women were allowed to gather and do. And so she would attend the Golden Needle School, and actually underneath the needlepoint in their bags were books, and they met with a professor at the local university, at the University of Herat, because she was living in Herat. And her studies were very rigorous, and it's something that you can really see in her work. And now, once again, Afghanistan is under Taliban rule. Once again, there are these, quote, morality laws that are even more restrictive than they were when Anjuman was alive. And girls and women aren't not only not allowed to read in public, they're not allowed to speak or sing. And one of the things that's been really remarkable is to see how her words continue to be a beacon for women and girls and across the world in the diasporic population, but also within the country. And so I have my phone up here because I want to play, it's just a 1-minute video, and it's okay if you can't see it. But essentially, there were these sisters who call themselves the Last Torch, and they sing poetry, and they don full burqas to be able to remain anonymous. And the second video that they made was one of Anjuman's poems, and it's like what made them go viral, so to speak. So I'm just gonna play this video for you guys, if I can. Let's see. They are no longer in the country, but they are still making videos as far as I know. So I co-translated Anjuman's work with a woman named Marina Omar, and this is our co-translation of the poem that they just sang. In vain. I don't want to open my mouth. What can I sing? I'm despised these days, so what if I sing or not? What can I say of honey when it tastes like poison on my tongue? I curse the brutal fist that smashed my mouth. There is no one in the world I can rely on. So what if I cry, I laugh, I die, I linger? Alone in this corner with only defeat and regret. I was born in vain. My tongue is sealed shut. I know it is spring, my heart, a time of celebration. But I'm a clipped wing. I can't fly. Though I've been silent for some time, I remember the song. I pull the words from my heart in an endless whisper. Celebrate the day when I will break from this miserable cage and emerge drunkenly singing. I am not that weak willow tree that trembles in the wind. I'm an Afghan girl, and so I howl. I always want to start with Anjuman's words when I can. I know that I gave a little context to her and kind of why the last torch exists, but that poem in particular I think is a really great example of her being such a deliberate and careful student of ancient Persian poetry. It's a ghazal, which my co-translator and I weren't able to totally render in English in the same way. You can hear it in the song, the kind of repetition at the end of the line. And so she's drawing from this lineage that's over 1,000 years old, and often writing in ghazals, but then also writing in free verse, which was really only made possible by earlier 20th century Persian writers like Farrokhzad and Shamlu. And here's an example of one of those. This is called How. How should a wandering writer find her way home? Through which precise alleys? Where is the peaceful corner where one, exhausted by the seconds of life, can sleep? Leashed through the horse of feverish dreams, life is a dreadful gallop, charging through the feast of the spirit. You close your eyes and break free from pain's grip, wending your way to the valley of imagination. 1 or 2 moments under the spell of death, and then tired feet, bloody lips, dry mouth. You find yourself in a rocky place. Before your eyes, only fumes, fire, and mirage. A broken sound in your throat. Water, water. Suddenly, a trembling, something strange and throbbing. Swimming in a bed of sweat, you open your eyes and sober up. This is called Bent. I want to guide my poems upright, but the reach of the city ceilings is low and arched. There isn't even a crack to push through. So, prudently, my poems have fallen asleep, hunched over. There is no vigilant hand to break through these domes. No one will ever see the limits of their thoughts. Here, you live bent, and you die bent. A story. When they glimpsed my silvery fortune, they stole from me jealously. They kidnapped my horse, shamelessly using it to rush at me. Ugh, curse that gang of cheats and frauds who mocked my sincerity. They slammed every door in my face, set daggers on every window. When I opened an eye, they hammered in white-hot nails. When I bled, they turned into wolves and drank. Vein by vein, they cut at my life. Thousands of blades in my one body. Why shackle my pen? They never saw it stray. Why clip the budding smile from the small garden of my lips? Why such hatred? Perhaps they were a nest of scorpions. After ransacking my senses, they slept, satisfied. The skies grew fitful with the fumes of my torment. Thunder boomed, and the clouds roared. Their chests burst with lightning. The pillars of the earth shook, and the clan woke up in a panic. They darted around, then froze, stunned. Their 4 walls collapsed. My eyes rained tears of resolve. At my hope's dying breath, the clouds gave it life. This is I, she who speaks. If only those thieves could see me now. Sorry, some of them are just really intense. This is called The Night of Poetry. It is night, and poetry ignites my moments. Fervor combs my voice like knotted hair. What kind of fire quenches my thirst? What soulful aroma stirs my air? I don't know from which mountain of desire blows this fresh breeze through my hot solstice. Such pure light falls from a bright cloud that there is no need for me to weep and wail. Sparks pour out of my sighs like stars. The pigeon of my prayer nestles in the heavens. My wild tears fall, drop after drop, on each line of this book. My God, look how needlessly they flow. Sound to sound, then word to word, then volumes, a riot. Resurrection emerges from my lingering silence. Morning, don't tear at the silk of my illusion. I swear to the night, when poetry ignites my moments. This one is called Flower of Smoke. I'm filled with emptiness, filled with this abundance of want. The field of my being often burns, simmering with fiery fever. From this strange seething, my notebook suddenly comes alive. Its papery features blush. It is a rare flower, yet the body gathers its smell and color from these wisps of smoke. They're not all so emotionally fraught. I really love this one. It's called Bedroom. And this is kind of like also drawing from the ancient lineage of Persian poetry, so it's telling like a story about faith and devotion. Bedroom. Sorry, I'm realizing I'm really leaning forward over this thing. Bedroom. I saw a man in the gutter, sleeping with nothing. He was covered with an old rag, the rest of him bare on the wet ground. He had no shoes on his feet or clothing on his body, exposed and unaware of the people gathered around him. They mocked the man, laughing. One person said he was crazy, another a drunk. One said he was an idiot, another ill, another dead, another lovesick. All who passed the man stood above him, stupefied. Suddenly, he raised his head. Seeing the crowd, he asked, "What is this about? Why are you so shocked? Have you seen an ogre?" They told him, "We're baffled by your state. Foolish man, you're sleeping on the side of the road. If you had any sense, you wouldn't lie like this. Perhaps some Layla has wrecked your reason." He said, "Don't worry about this lunatic. You think this shabby man is an animal of the wilderness. You ask about my clothes, but I'm wearing silk, invisible to sinful eyes. The devout don't want cushions. I'm unafraid of the road's thorns and shrubs. If you had eyes in your head, you would see my pillows. This bed of mine is finer than woven velvet." I sat down, wide-eyed, looking at the flowers, and I saw the pattern of a prayer rug. I'll just read one more from this book. This one's called If. O daughters of a century's seclusion, mute nuns, strangers, with smiles dead to the religion of your lips, you silently crawled to a dark nook with a tribe of memories dozing under a heap of regrets. If you find a smile pressed among your thoughts, tell it. We don't hope for our lips to bloom, but in the stream of our teary whispers, one day, smile, give our words some color. And so this next book that I'm going to read from, I do kind of a silly thing because it took me a really long time to write it. And so I put laurels on because it took me 10 years. And I wore like a really crazy mask at the launch event, and I can't, people tell me I should travel with it, but it would fall apart. So this is what I do. I want to be cognizant of time. So Agrippina was a real person. She was an ancient Roman noblewoman and also an empress. She was living in a time and place in which women were legally second-class citizens, but she also had remarkable privilege as somebody within a noble family. Despite not having legal rights, she also felt that she should have power and that she would be capable with it. And she was right. She realized kind of her impossible dream of running the Roman Empire and did it with remarkable facility. And she used men as puppets to do it. Despite being this political genius, that's not what she's remembered for or known for. She's largely known by the men to whom she was related. So Caligula was her brother, Nero was her son, Claudius, who's another emperor, was her uncle and husband, which was also creepy then. But once she was married to Claudius and became empress, and her son was adopted by by Claudius to become next in line, she really was able to kind of maneuver herself really remarkably. And so this book is as much about her as it is about my obsession with her. And so there are these kind of what you would call like normal quote poems, ragged right edge poems, and then there are these kind of prose poems about me trying to learn more about her. And this is the first poem that I wrote about her, which is inspired by one of the versions of her death, because there are many versions of her death. So it's called Agrippina the Younger. Nero had her cut down the middle to see the womb that formed him. And as he peered in the cleft, that exposed organ began to pedal outward, growing and deepening to an enormous vagina, until he looked in and saw only darkness. So he burned prisoners in his garden for light and shut her up behind a large carving. Her remnants quietly broke off, moving into Nero, Piso, Vindex, Galba. So there were hauntings and blood and exile and suicide. Nero shucked sea urchins, plucked songs on his lyre, and she continued to grow until she held all of Rome, which burned and was rebuilt, while she tessellated, fanned, and Agrippina smiled with her mouth of bloody eye teeth. The Rhine, 200 million BCE onward. Vast plates shifted, littler ones, with constant sounds and heat terrible. Then there was a crack, and so a river, draining new mountains. It courses in my mind through the ice age, moving while Los settles. The melt raises waters, river meandering, reworks its ice age braid plain. Watch the humans from above, like small matchsticks. Mine it for peat, salt, pull it salmon, ride it laden with stuffs. Watch as they claim swaths, build crossings, develop thickly along its shores, wage wars. These dramas of land have happened everywhere. Eventually, she will be born here. That is the only reason I care at all. The Palatine Hill. I walk the Palatine Hill for some hours, the sun beginning to heat, then move to a bench under a large umbrella pine, brown, dull needles snapping. I try to see what Agrippina saw, smell the needles, hear beetles or crickets sounding like rock carving into rock, or into reeds, wood. The trees, perhaps different tree types, the birds maybe, but the paths the same, the stones, the hotness. A woman close by carries a long, thin banner of wilted fabric. Walking backward, she calls information to those who follow. Agrippina the Younger became the Empress of Rome after tricking her uncle into marrying her and adopting her son. She murdered her uncle later. And I smile for how strange that a handful of men defined this woman's life narrative, and it continues even as the buildings she moved through have begun to crumble back to the earth. The Palatine Hill. I'm here to collapse the disk of time, stand beside her. But these aren't even all her same structures. I look at one, and my mind turns to how she might have passed through an archway, hand grazing a wall. Then the placard, 200 years after her death. It all looks ancient to my ignorant eye. And what holds or fails is so arbitrary. Frescoes from 2 millennia ago appear fresh. A large, relatively young marble building reduced to nubs and dirt with a dark sign as a marker. Then there was a taking of stones from one thing for another, the huge bronze statue thrashed to pieces for valuable reuse. The many sackings of Rome brought fire and blood, but amazingly raised little. I learn what survives best is buried. What is buried continues to surface. With each dig for a subway line, more. After excavation, a little metal gate at its lip so you can peer. Cats are quick to move in. The city built, torn, built over, so every scene is thoroughly changed since her lifetime. I can never see her visions, a strange wanting. This is a continual dance of nearly, but not, sapping me. It's so hot and dusty here, the minute I return to my rented space, I fling my shoes and lather from my feet up to my knees. Prone on the couch under cool air, I think of the ancient cave found in France, the rock where cave people stubbed out torches. The carbon is dark as if just done, not 30,000 years ago. Then the engraving found in a cave in South Africa dated over twice that old. I think, as a white American especially, this amount of time passed is beyond what I've been trained to hold in my head. To get to old human-made structures where I grew up, you must drive through hours of desert, scramble down dirt paths into canyons. And I have done this, seen ancient indigenous people's homes under cliffs, their hieroglyphs bigger than me. Most are riddled with bullet holes. As a child, I found a flat place with countless arrowheads glinting. I held some, seeing the chips and glassy rock by hand so long ago, and I left them behind as is respectful. The oldest object I've ever touched that isn't a land formation was when I somehow went on a paleontological dig in New Mexico as a 12-year-old, everyone else scientists, and intrigued non-scientist adults. One paleontologist guided us in more hardscrabble fossil finding. We hunkered down on a small mound of thumb-sized rocks. He lifted one, explained it was fossil and what to look for, how to try to find the broken piece. I scanned and picked one, holding it out, like this, and he took it, uniting the knob with the other in his hand. It fit so perfectly, with his surprise at my quickness, he only managed, "Yup." A few days later, I held a brow horn brought out from the dirt. Agrippina, age 5. She sees her father was a general, and this is when he was on campaign, and he took his family with him, which was very unusual. This is in Antioch. She sees the trail of gore and follows, finds a small roe deer, arrow almost, through the neck. Crouching, she pushes it out, breaks the tip, slips the shaft from the deer as it kicks weakly. She lifts its head to her lap, strokes between the eyes, cradles the ear with her little hand. Ticks move to the hairless arms, blood pumping out the hole, then less. The breaths more and more shallow. She hums as her mother does the baby. The deer's tongue slips quietly from between its teeth. The girl still pets as the woods and head grow cold. She eyes the large warm belly, wants to press, massage whatever, out. Build a fire beneath so the flash will open and show. She sees the fire, the fur, all blackly twisted, skin splitting, the pink fawn's eye on her. This is when she gets married to her first husband, who is Nero's father. She's 13, which was not unusual. Agrippina, age 13. Domitius gives her a ring of iron. Agrippina fingers it under her robes, while slaves weave her hair with flowers, place gold on her neck and wrists. She thinks of the man older than her father ever was. At the ceremony, a pregnant sow is brought forward, dark and wreathed in leaves. Wine, crumbs from holy cake are dusted on its brow, for the goddess Ceres, for Terra Mater, for this marriage. A man raises his axe, blunt side down, strikes the sow, slices the stunned animal's throat, opens her belly. The priest pushes fetal piglets aside, handles the entrails close to his eyes, looking for flaws. Another man places the insides on an altar for burning. Domitius watches Agrippina while the men butcher the pig, char the guts. She does not look away. The priest steps into the blood, face covered, prays in whispers, a flute drowning out any ominous sounds. The island of Pendateria, now Ventotene. A friend is passing through Rome and we get to the small volcanic island of Exile. This is where Agrippina and many other family members were exiled. Train, ferry early in the morning. Its population in the hundreds. There's a museum there with mostly two-handled jugs called amphoras with bases tapering to a point for storage on ships. Objects the color of bruises covered in light wormy twists dredged from the seafloor and shipwrecks. There's a woman's skeleton and some coffin bits around her, her bones wood-like. It is here I learn I cannot see where Agrippina was held, closed off from us far from town on the island's edge. The docent gives tours in Italian, but only after the last boat leaves that night. I find a large placard, umber plastic on plastic with words almost lost, the parts dark as if from soot pushing deep into the edges, whole columns of words eaten. White veins thread all over, some peeling to the gray beneath. It reads in fragmented Italian, Maggiore, finishing Agrippina Maggiore, Agrippina the Elder, La Villa, Octavia, imprisoned women who died here. The veins on the placard widen through the image of a woman's face. It could be anyone. There's even English, but it's smaller and the cracks and burned dark edges have taken it. It is well here Agrippina learns her husband, Domitius, is dead. She felt relief, probably, but I'm uncertain it was relief alone, another feeling quick, her son there without her. You can't see the mainland shore from here. Agrippina probably thought she would waste for years, if not die, on the island. My friend and I move up from the main courtyard up to a lovely restaurant where the owner herself serves us fish and stuffed squash blossoms and herby bread. She asks what I'm doing here, so far from home, and I tell her of my hope to see the ruins, even from water. I know a man, Rocco. He has a boat. So soon we are out on water very blue. It's clear at the edges, then drops to dark. Rocco flies past the ruins before I have a moment. The museum called it a curtain of brick. Most tumbled into the sea. Below the brick, paddle leaf on yellow stone, door-like holes high up on ledges that go nowhere, a drop from a cliff. The sky shows through the door holes like tombstones. And I'm probably just going to read a couple more. This is after she marries. Maybe I'll just read one more. This is after Nero becomes emperor and they start to things kind of fall apart for her. The assassination of Agrippina. The ship a tall flame on water. Agrippina drags herself onto shore, covered in sand and water greens. She pants on her back a while. A light there on her eyes. She opens, sees a bright blade. There is no stopping what has already happened. A band latches on my throat. I want her to have power of command here too, to slow the inevitable, down to tenderness. Wait, she says, and he does. They sit cross-legged, telling of things, every moment that led to this one. But time passes. There's no more to tell. Agrippina grows quiet. I suppose you should kill me. The man looks away. Here, she says, trains the knife on her womb. Do it here so maybe he too will feel it. Thank you.
I want to see that mask. The mask you were talking about.
I have pictures
wearing.
of anyone.
Incredible. And thanks for bringing the laurel wreath. That was perfect. Our next reader is Jesse Nathan. His Eggtooth won the New Writers Award, the Housatonic Book Prize, sounds amazing, and Kansas Book Award. And it was a finalist for the Northern California Book Award, Golden Poppy Book Awards, and the Nasrat's Yassini Poetry Prize. His poems have appeared in the Paris Review, the New York Review of Books, the New Republic Poetry, and other magazines you might have heard of. His new book, One Question, Short Conversations with Poets, Prose and Interviews, with poets including Diane Seuss, Arthur Z., Yusef Komunyakaa, Joy Graham, Frank Bedard, Raul Zarita, Bob Hass, Kathy Park Hong, and many, many others, is forthcoming from Sweeney's later this month. We could not get it. We tried for this event, but it is, the pub date is before the end of April, and you'll be able to get it soon. His second book of poetry, the San Francisco poem, is forthcoming from Scribner in 2027. The Northern California Book Award judges said, "Freedom challenges form in these contemporary pastoral and bracingly anti-pastoral poems set in the Midwest and Northern California. Using a template created by 17th century metaphysical poet John Donne, Nathan forges a new poetics of assonance, slant rhyme, and loose rhythms that, as Robert Hass says in the book's introduction, creates an ecosystem of echoic effects. Covalently, narrative and lyric, these poems interrogate landscape, history, human relationship, and poetry itself, to, like the titular Eggtooth, break through the shell of tradition that shaped them and give birth to something vulnerable, shining, and new. In these pages, Nathan's apparent plain-spoken style is illuminated by means of inventive diction and syntax to reveal the inner workings of a unique artistic imagination that transforms the everyday into something rich and strange. The journey from childhood to adulthood, from country to city, from past to present, these are familiar themes posing alienation against belonging, but here they feel new, current, and vital to our time. I have no idea if you're going to read from that book or new poems, but it all applies, I promise you. Please welcome Jessie Nathan.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Joyce, and Poetry Flash and Art House. This is a very special space to get to read in. Come to many great events over the years here, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Diana, for those poems, searing poems. I'm going to read a little bit from Eggtooth, and in the trying to keep up with Diana's translation work, which is incredible. Read a couple of translations and some from the new book. So just a couple from Eggtooth to start off, and as Joyce described, it's a book that moves between rural Kansas and Northern California, both of which I claim me. I grew up near San Pablo Park, and then when I was 10, the family moved to rural Kansas, and I then began a new kind of life on an organic grain farm among my mother's people, Mennonite people. So for a half Jewish kid from Berkeley, it was a bit of a shift. This is a poem in the voice of a tree. It's called What the Cedar May Have Said. If I were half as free as you, I wouldn't droop, make faces of parchment, shed branches like phantoms, wouldn't hide a heart of soft scarlet. If you were half as free as me, you wouldn't go, you who leave not once like guests, but over and over like friends. There's something about the distance, the distant past. Thinking about these Agrippina poems, that also inspires me and so many others. I think unlocks some way of thinking not only about where we come from, but where we are, who we are. Archilochus, I'm not sure, I've heard it both ways, is one of the oldest poets in the Western tradition, maybe the oldest extant poet, even further into the shadows of time than Sappho, for instance. Was a kind of a cantankerous, unpleasant character by all accounts, and also a brilliant poet. And I found myself thinking about beginnings a lot in this book. Beginnings of my own work, my own trajectory, but also the beginnings and trajectory of the Western lyric tradition, which Archilochus had something to do with, sometimes credited with inventing the idea of the I am, although it's a Greek vision that gets translated into English traditions, iambos, certain kinds of rhythms, and certainly the kind of taste-based diatribe lyric. So this is a little poem, well, it's a little longer, but about all that. Archilochus. Woke to a wind that rose full of bird call, dropping it fresh, as if drawn from a well. Starlings mobbing elms like a creek talking. A farmhouse window rattling lightly. My eyes find my desk. Notes and lists, tasks and numbers interbedded with books stacked like the beams that used to be a soap house, now mythic behind the barn. In dust, cord, silverfish growing over clear intention. Love, I woke to the wind that rose up full of birds and for a second didn't know my name. Woke with a tickle of panic, haunted, but not sure why. A thirsting to have my sensibility immersed, drawn through an othering element, though I think he's a wretch. My job today is to dig, to put in a few posts, put in a fence. And as I stab and sink my narrow spade through turf and root and worm and sticky clay, I'm thinking of boundaries. I'm thinking him, hooligan, scamp, soldier, skilled at singing. He traded cow for lyre, joined an army to feel sober, fatal, and in buskins fought among medlars, where the wine waves lisp Aegean sand lining the Isle Thasos, where marble quarries ziggurat down, lived by the ash spear, liked screwing like war. Seam of the scrotum, he sang, wick rubbed raw, I am a weapon, myrtle, soft horn, grape. One fragment reads simply rhinoceros. When his promised father called it off, he seduced her young sister in a poem and came on her crotch in the last tercet, kept living by the promptings of his sex. Said, need is a limb loosener, and then of his poems crowed, there's virtue in the feet. His were silenced by an acquaintance, Crow. It was an all-out fight. We don't know why Crow slashed him groin to throat, left him to rats. His mom had been enslaved. His high-born dad, a founding father of a frontier town, island spired with pines and arching from the sea like an ass's backbone. He thought friends hurt the most, that we were surely promised light, that change is birth, metamorph, term of art for stone's reception to, without melting, great stress. In the fall heat, I plant these fence posts till lunchtime, sandwich of apple, turkey, sliced sheer as cheesecloth on buttered whole grain. I hear George, my cabbie once in Athens. Sure, it's nice here, unless you want to leave. Hypocrite, Greek for actor, answerer, interpreter. When you read these drafts, love, you frowned. You say so much anger in your lines. Anger? Is that it? With marble tongues and teeth, he'd adorned his escutcheon of wood. It nictated in sunlight like sunlit seas. I'm thinking of our work and what it means. A fence may be a seam, or seam a bridge. Both are gestures in the air. This, a shield, so the dogs don't muck in the septic soup, to separate what's slew from what runs free. That's what I think I'm up to here? Maybe. Initiatory lust. Remember when you brought me here? Nudged me down on bracken, toiled on me like on a straw, gnats fussing. A pleasure went out through me like a gale, though pleasure is much too shallow a word for what roils me like ribbons in a wind. Some law, some ageless vice had grip of me and squeezed and rang me fully out. It's so far back in time. The critics say, quote, "We have no reason to believe he in any sense ever reached home." Deserved wasps hover on his gravesite. The scold, what Pindar called him. Horsetail helmed, liver-tongued, and ever hard as stakes of Osage orange, who hated the polish of frauds and hacks, hated tasteless desire, boring dinners. "Overlook my ways," he'd say. "I'm countrified. Eat with my hands. Read naked in the stock tank." Banned in Sparta for his candor. In Rome, all trainee priests were forbidden his poems. But to the Spartans, his lascivity wasn't the obscenity. What burned them up is just what carries me through unmoored months, has carried me, and has to sound my poem for one who had no epic in him, had just one shot voice, a tetchy melody, who, as he tells it, bleeding on Thasos in the screech of battle, perceives he loves his life more than that fight, more than duty to any reckless collectivity, shrugs off his prized and perfectly good shield because he can run faster without it, and abandons those slopes to start over. Walking with you in a field at dawn. They sashay, those tendrils of mist. Sunlight glitters in the wet spiderwebs draped all over the witch's broom, flaring from the base of the tree. Hackberry, I think. Witch's broom, a flag of panic, a casting madly outward under the stress of something we can't see. The tree, the only one out here, and whatever secret fears it has, the swallows still call its upper branches home. This is a poem, this is the last poem in the book, and it's about, I suppose, that electricity between two places, again, across distances, Kansas and California, for me. Sunday in his grandmother's time had been the day you went visiting. Noontime news topped with beet borscht and pickled pig's feet, cottage cheese stuffed in pancakes, and spudding, silly talk, and coffee. His art, with his hopes, had conspired to conduct him many states away, but even now, Sunday's here, and he calls his kin. And when he'd call his parents, his dad would begin with weather. 5 inches since Friday, 7 3/10 since Monday. It may even hawk up more. And his mother would inveigh, or other times dial up other composings. First frost came, so we picked up the hoses, slid the barn door closed. Any minute now, we'll get a fresh straw for the stalls. Or she'd say how they butchered the hens. One had a clot of new eggs in her, ready to lay. Or she might tell stories of Aunt Larry, who never married and carried a snuff box. Or Dad would describe having recycled faxes that had blankened, each message returned to the ether, and then the son might describe a minus tide. Or tell how his shoulder, tattooed, has haired over, as if his swallow flies in a thicket. Or he'd ask, how low is the well? Or what kind of locust, again, is the swing tree? And so forth. They'd sneeze, cough, mention the soap house had to be raised, or that the catamaran was trounced in a storm, or how their bodies were giving out. An organ recital, they'd call it. And he, drinking coffee, might offer as balm the lights up the hills in the night in his city, described as the winkings of great piles of embers. And his mother might report on emerald leaves, emerald wheat, high leaning cloud banks. Or his father might say that the starlings were mustering the pasture. They could murder if they wanted. And the son, not really sure what then to say, says an iconic radio tower from where he sits presents like a comb jelly. And they, who in his imagination are in the dining room, he knows well, hold up their phone up against the back window to let him hear the call, so personal and clear, of the train out there. A couple of translations as a kind of transition to the second book, which also has a few translations in it that I might read. Alfonsina Storni, great poet of the 20th century, and this is from the Spanish. And the poem is, the first one is called Melancholia. O death, I love you, but I adore you, life. And when I'm put in my little box to sleep forever, fill my eyes one last time with the spring sun. Leave me a few moments under the sky's heat. Let the sunlight shudder through my coldness. It was such a good star to come out each day to tell me, good day. I'm not afraid of rest. It's good to rest. But first, let me be kissed by that merciful traveler who every morning, happy as a child, called at my windows. This is another poem by Alfonsina Storni, The Call. It is night, so much silence that if God were to blink, I would hear it. I drift. In the jungle, my soles press the fresh grass, splashing dew. The stars speak with me, and I kiss my fingers fine as white moon. And suddenly I'm hurt, and the heart seizes, and my hair curls, and my back expands. Oh, my fingers bloom, my lips throw out wings. I'm going to die drowning in lights and fragrances. In the middle of the jungle, your sweet voice calls me. Master of the lyric. This is the next book. This is, it comes out next year. It's called The San Francisco Poem, and it's a book-length sequence about this place, this Bay Area. And it takes the form, I guess, of a calendar, of a poem most days of the year, not every day, but some are very short, just a few lines, some are a little bit longer. And there are some experiments with translation or riffs upon the work of other poets. And so I'll start with a couple of those. And the first one is from Francois Villon, or after Francois Villon, really. It's hard to call it quite a translation, but it's also clearly a collaboration with Villon. There's no danger like love, nothing sillier than serious. None mighty as the weak, no luck without drought, no singer not prisoner, no movement like stillness, no holiday but among the poor. There's no noise like chant, like silence, no magic like chance, no faith like a heretic's, no palimpsest like a cenotaph, no wit like a pragmatist's, no grumbler like a gambler, no low like a high. Nothing strange, nothing finished, no science, not fiction, no play like work, nothing boring as success, none frantic as the ordered, no sleep like death. So I'll eat, and I'll drink, and I'll stay up all night. For there's no feast like failure, no onions like onions, no holiday but among the poor. This is after Vera Pavlova, great Russian poet. Jacket of mine, why so scuffed? Am I not gentle? Eyes of mine, why so weak? Am I not keen? Smile of mine, why so fleeting? Am I not grateful? Song of mine, why so many words? Am I not enough? That was funny to me to have. It's such a long book of poetry. There has to be some accounting. So I'll just read a few of these. The titles are, that was June 25th after Vera Pavlova. And I'll just read a few to give you a taste of the book. The titles are the dates, although it's been kind of interesting as some of them appear in magazines. Sometimes they have the date as the title, but sometimes I've been giving them new titles, which is fun. So they have a kind of double life. But here they are, dates on the calendar, that strange way in which time is both deeply personal and somehow has nothing to do with us, or feels that way. August 4th. From any hill in these 49 square miles, you can look out and estimate the sum, to sum, for sum, of the empire of the possible, outward from the body, outward from its illness, by its illness. Ossip Mandelstam's ideal, by contrast, was the city-state. What he loved about Venice was its claim to be open to anyone, a port at the crossroads of Africa, Asia, Europe, and the marble figures posted at San Marcos to greet incoming ships weren't soldiers or bishops or kings, but an image of the first humans, an invitation to the garden of difference. August 5th. What I love most about you is your mind, which is the parent of your ways, a city-state of careful openness and pattern beauty, fosterer of secret canals and sighing bridges, archways, palaces, clear-eyed boatmen, choosing turns half improvised and near perfect. A poem about the seasons here. I've always sort of resented or been annoyed by the way that the four seasons get applied to California and are so ill-fitting. It's not the right model. It's more like 11 seasons. This is August 13. Throw out fall, winter, April, summer, concepts springing from another life. Now it's the season of ghosts, riding the city, threading the buildings. St. Petersburg, a friend calls it from his perch in the Presidio, getting out his stocking cap in July, then sunscreen in September, an embarrassment of sun before the season of cold and rain, running hard all the way through February, if all's working well, which it isn't, until the blossoming begins and the land thickens with pear and cherry veiling the hills and pink-white carpets salting the cars and the rains pattering and then pounding and going off and on until April, when their ending kicks off the season of dews, earth exuding its earnest of heat, the season of breezes, the season of hard wind, giving way to a long, dry stretch whose first half is this ghostly drama and whose second, in September, is the sun's. Or maybe there are only two seasons here, yellow and green, with fire between. August 19th. Dropped my damn phone on the platform. Flip phone, supposed to be rugged. It went to pieces and the battery skittered across the tile, some animal intent on getting away, and disappeared in the tracks. Took my power and memory. Spotted it sitting there between the rails just before a Bay Point train blew my hair back and howled. August 20th. Came back this morning, look left, look right, jump to the track to pluck it out, jump back up. Nobody cops to noticing. September 1, which in the year that I was writing this was Labor Day. Sleep, thinking, sleep, sleep, my body, sleep, eyes and tongue and parents and grandparents and exes I've hated and loved. Oh, my hunger, sleep, mockingbird, roach, fog, sleep, storm, sleep, sky, sleep, anyone sobbing, sleep, God of highways and towns, boat and calendar and hope, sleep, messenger, infant, farmer, hammer, muscle, please sleep, dear thinking, sleep, internet, whale, parrot, pen, bee, sleep, coffee pot and dandelion, sleep, John Henry, you have come through. Just a few more. September 5. Packed cafe off Castro. The poets reading in high style. At dinner afterwards at a house on Buena Vista. The poets trying to decide if there's a gay meter, a stanza for the kissing, and whose jacket is more arrogantly shabby. I text you a picture of the crew, our beards gleaming in disco light. Scrambling home later by way of Corona Heights, rock, shadow, a rising wind, and then that sudden view floating up over the city, rolling pasture of 10,000 eyes. I think out finally beyond desire is where love is. Beyond the charming fondness for a rosy nipple or an outrageous thigh. I mean, out beyond feeling or pleasure, there's a practice. Neither exactly rational nor entirely irrational. Astonished love that loosens the grip of the self on itself. Love that cleans up vomit, that finds you when you're in the heights, lost in the despair wind, out beyond desire. September 11. Light going earlier and earlier feels like a trick. I ask Frank the bank about the election, and he says the difference between us, he says it friendly, is he never had the luxury to believe in the myth, the story, he calls it, of this myth-loving country. Never didn't know. September 17th. I'm trying to remember as we watch two bison bulls descended from a pair imported from Kansas in the paddock at Golden Gate Park, one mounted on the other and thrusting for all he's worth, when I first heard the word bisexual. Probably at a pool lifeguarding as a teenager, probably said with scorn. I too disliked the word, I say, because it makes me think of bisect, which turns into dissect in my mind, and the frozen frog I opened in grade school, and the human compulsion to cut open what is ineffable, to confirm it is ineffable. You start listing species. Bottlenose dolphin, bonobo, black swan, lion, not frogs. Bighorn sheep are, you say, which reminds you to order a pair of foam horns for Halloween, and you do it on your phone as we talk. I want to marry, you say, a bighorn sheep. I thought you wanted to be one, I say. Penguins, you say. Penguins are socially monogamous and sexually not. Pair bond for life, but have sex with various friends. The humping bison heaves himself off now like a falling boulder. His wattles shake. A few tourists take pictures, laughing. What about a picnic tomorrow, I say, out at the batteries? Somehow you reply, those old guns give me hope. And yes, to a picnic. Hope, I say, I don't understand. The bottom bull is chewing his cud. Because time, you say, takes things away, but sometimes gives them back, overgrown and aimless. I don't know if you've been out the very edge of San Francisco, these ruins of guns from the World War era, half buried. And the poem ends, it begins the day after the Day of the Dead, and so it ends with the Day of the Dead. But I'm going to read just two more, and I'll read October 31st. This is October 31st, and then there's a postscript, Day of the Dead, which I'll save for another time. October 31st. Nights are incoherent to me. So often I fear them. I say, close enough beside you to share a pillow. And you answer, all day we were apart, but I was with you. And then you ask, what was the secret of your day? The one thing that woke you up, or stuck, or made you grin. Tell me yours, and before we sleep, I'll tell you mine. And I'm actually going to, I don't know why quite I had the instinct to do this, but the book begins with a kind of longer poem that's a prelude that kind of sets the scene of San Francisco, and particularly the corner of San Francisco that I was living in, the Bayview district at the time. So I'll end with the beginning. This is the prelude. Before there were human eyes to see it, countless other eyes saw this treeless salt marsh, reeds and needlegrass and sage and wax myrtle, and the eyes of the salt marsh mouse and the grizzlies and the fish they caught in streams coming down the ridges of serpentine to this lowland that was sunnier by far than the rest of the dune-filled peninsula, so that when the first people came across it, it was attractive, and they built a village here where sea and land and sky meet and mingle. Eelgrass, tule, shrimp, little-neck clam, dense as the clouds of shorebirds that would lift, drawing a curtain on the sun. And along the water, the people made shell mounds for burials, for bits of shell and fish bob. And when the tides rose, the mounds became docks for traders setting out to call on other clans, on other bay shores. And years swept by like that, unknown years. One day bringing strangers who changed things with their mission and their sickness, their fences marking the grasslands out for cattle pasture, deeded over in their system of laws to Don Jose Cornelio Bernal, who rarely came down from his villa on Valencia Street. And the natives, conscripted to pray and labor, tended his acreage and managed his cows, which gave him tallow and leather to vend to the Anglos, who steadily moved into town, until one day Anglos outnumbered the Spanish. And because time is an earth of secrets, it should be no surprise that when someone found gold in the mountains nearby, the population swelled, and the brothers Hunter showed up, fresh from the Navy, and raised a few hasty shacks on the point on which John Hunter would leave the family name. And they sold milk and leather and carrots and hay, and the shacks became houses and a hotel, and sometimes when they turned the soil, they would turn up bits of shell or a working pestle. And when they commissioned a road, it was paved with shell, filched from the mounds, and a racetrack looped along the marsh, stables and more hotels that drew the moneyed classes from what was now the city of the barefoot saint, a playboy who repented. And the women came with parasols, and the men with cigars and binoculars, day trippers to the compound called Bayview Park. And although it burned within 20 years, the name Bayview stayed, as did a brewery and a few lingering churches, and all the clocks kept spinning on, and someone thought to fur out a dry dock, the largest in the West, complete with caisson, bulkheads, workshops, drills, and furnaces, and jobs, over 1,500 of them. And after the dock came tanneries and factories for glue and fertilizer and fireworks, each flushing offal down the creeks and tide pools. The humid stench of blood and waste hung in the streets. 325 cows, 650 hogs, 1,000 sheep turned into meat daily by 1877 in slaughterhouses owned by French and English merchants and worked by Chinese men from Guangdong, recently unemployed after building the railroad. And these workers put up shanties on the water's edge where they seined for shrimp, averaging half a ton per 200 fishermen in 40 boats. They'd sell the catch downtown and to the people living in houses on the Serpentine Hills where the Daughters of Charity opened a reformatory for wayward girls, runaways and unwed mothers in a district seen as wayward, still easier to reach by scow schooner on the water than it was by land, so that the need for scows was a need for boat builders who heard the call from the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark. Jack London's Snark was built by Bayview shipwrights, and the land just beyond the slough had by now a reputation as the best soil and light anywhere in the county, and an Italian family opened a sumptuous market, broccoli, celery, radish, leek, wreaths of flowers, and someone built a sugar refinery and an opera house, so the laborers would have a little culture, and the first performance was Phantasma, a play about love in a ghost-ridden bower, and trees grew among the houses, toyon and live oak, and all the while the years ran fast and thick, and Portuguese and Maltese farmers and fishermen began coming to this corner of the city, following rumors of good farmland, and these newcomers squeezed out the Chinese shrimpers, who were barred by land from owning the land they lived on, by law from owning the land they lived on, who were driven away to Chinatown while Charles Schwab bought up the dry docks, and the neighborhood gradually changed again. For time has no turning points, only the silent flowing of earthly hours. And one day, a war with Spain erupted and meant more dry docks going up in the Bayview, and war gave way to peace, which gave itself to more war. And the Navy had long liked the district for its solidity and stability. In the quake of 1906, the sole casualty in the district was in a single house on First Avenue that slid into the bay. And so by November 1940, it had bought and closed all the slaughterhouses and rolled out a base that soon was producing better than a ship a day right through the war years, machined out as often as not by thousands of black people who came from Houston and Shreveport and Tulsa on the promise of $1 an hour, what it would take a black man 4 hours to make in Birmingham, and they brought with them a blues, "Oh, San Francisco, please make room for me." And were allowed to live only in one of two neighborhoods, the Fillmore, in Victorians recently emptied of Japanese residents, also the city's Jewish quarter, or here in the Bayview, around the naval base, where dorms for single workers had popped up, and row houses for families, structures whose formula was called the full five. 5 rooms over a garage, sometimes a Mediterranean facade in a modern style called shadow box. And these had been occupied by Italian families who were moving now to North Beach, selling their houses built over remnants of reformatory and tannery and racetrack and the last traces of the shell mounds. And the war drove production, and production drove a boom. And between 1940 and 45, the population went from 14,500 to 43,000. But after that came peace. And peace for the country meant hardship for the workers. For by 1949, jobs had declined from a peak of 18,235 to 6,000, and Bayview was known as the Forgotten District, By 1974, the military closed shop altogether, and the village life on this spur of land was stranded, cut off by the new 101 highway and the 280, but home to the city's football team and windy sunshine. And in that sun and wind, there lived a family. The father, a welder, born in Biloxi, the mother, a gadfly and journalist from Killeen, their ancestors kidnapped from Ghana and Guinea in the bellies of ships, arriving here generations later for the war effort. And they had a son who was a talented mechanic, worked on a local shop, and had, with his wife, a Muni driver on the 37 Corvette, bought this full 5 with a balconette in 1999 by way of that American invention, the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, in this case $155,000 at 6.99%, and time seemed on their side by 2005 when the mailings started coming from outfits like Encore Credit Corporation, originators of $23.3 billion in high-interest loans, or Option One, $61.7 billion. And they figured, well, why not take a draft of the American dream, buy a second car and fix up the windows and the yard by pulling money out of the property, pulling some cash out for a daughter's college fund or that dreamed of week in Maui. And so they refinanced using a pick-a-plan loan the mailers described, $55,000 against the house, variable interest, the sort made famous in depositions later in which bankers spoke of preying on mud people, higher commissions for higher risk. And then fate turned the screws when she lost her job and he got throat cancer and the interest rate kept rising. They couldn't keep up and missed 1, 2, 3 payments, and the bank sold the loan at a fire sale price to investors in New York and Bel Air who had no incentive to modify in the family's favor, since now the object was strictly profit. Investors who informed the family by late 2009 that the house would be auctioned at City Hall, and so they said goodbye to this place. Had a last meal here, and it was bought by a Mr. Young who redid the floors, repainted the house, and put it up for rent. And Paul and Josie called me in Menlo Park, where I was living on salad and Campari and preparing to spend a year studying for orals, the midpoint in the labyrinth of my degree program, to say they'd found a place in Bayview. And did I want to live with them? Paul just starting a master's in Gestalt therapy, and Josie working as a bike mechanic. And we signed a month-to-month lease, which is how I've come to be at this table, eating Paul's red lentil dal, which he's serving Josie, and you and me breaking bread, while the fog in the street rages with ghosts. Thank you.